Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program today, Assemblyman Don Miller. Don Miller represents the 121st Assembly District in New York State, and that includes parts of Onondaga County. We want to thank you folks all throughout the county for joining us for our program today. And Assemblyman Miller, always a pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks, Mike.
We've got lots of catching up to do since our last program. The big news out of Albany is the state budget was passed, and this is really our first chance to sit down and chat about that rather momentous event. Now, let me ask you a couple things right off the get-go. This is described as an historic budget. It spends less than last year's budget. That doesn't happen too much. A lot of people are focused on the fact that this budget's on time, too. That's kind of almost a historic thing. That doesn't happen that often. But how about that concept of it spending less than the year before?
I'm not so sure. We also have never had a federal stimulus package before, which sort of ballooned the budget for the prior budget year and the year before that. So most of the spending reduction, in fact, all of the spending reduction that you see on the top line of the budget, the $136 billion line compared to $132.5 this year, all of that is a reduction in that federal stimulus money. In the general fund, spending has actually gone up in this budget by something like 3.1 or 3.2%. So did the number go down? Yes, it did. Did spending actually shrink? Did the burden on taxpayers go down? Are anyone's school taxes going down? Is anyone's state income tax going down? No.
It's all kind of how you look at it sort of a thing.
Well, it all depends on, again, your definitions. In this budget process, a tax wasn't really a tax, it was a revenue action. I didn't see any revenue actions where money went from the public sector to the private sector. All of the revenue actions resulted in money going from the private sector to the public sector. I'm a pretty simple guy. To me, when that happens, when the state takes more money, that's called a tax. So a lot of it's in the definitions. Spending didn't really go down. We just lost some revenue from the federal government.
Well, let me put it in a different context then, and we'll see how you react to this. Last November, the voters of the state of New York said, you know what, we want some change in the state, and they gave Albany's political landscape some change. We have a new governor. We have a lot of new members of the legislature, including yourself, and it seemed to be much like what they did in who they sent to Washington, a little bit of a message saying, we don't want business as usual. We want things done differently. Is this budget a representation of something different than what was done prior years here?
From that perspective, perhaps. From small victories, and I said on the floor, if this is the best deal that I can get today, I'll take this. Out of 10 budget bills, I voted in favor of 6 of them. I voted against 4 of them. Mostly, I voted against the spending and the taxing portion, some of the borrowing. But there were a couple of small victories. One was it was on time, which in my mind isn't terribly significant, except that that's our job. You don't applaud the soprano for clearing his throat. That's what we're supposed to do. That's the job. It should be on time. One of the other things that may be considered a small victory in this is that we didn't increase any taxes. We didn't do any of the things that we've done over the past 5, 6, 7 years. There was no record spending in this, no record taxing in this. So we sort of slowed down, the train. But in terms of real historic events in this budget, I'm still looking.
I guess then what I'm hearing is you haven't dislocated your shoulder patting yourself on the back for some incredible job well done.
No, I haven't. One of the other small victories, I think, is that in an environment, a climate, a political climate, where there seemed to be consensus on this budget, there actually were still a number of members who were very precise. They were very careful about how they voted on each of the different bills. There were a number of no votes in areas where you might not expect them to be. So from that perspective, and I don't want to sound demeaning to the institution, but from the perspective of some of the members, mostly freshmen, sort of taking a closer look and trying to understand exactly what it was they're voting on and really dicing things out, saying, well, this part of the budget is good and this part is bad, instead of casting blanket yes or blanket no votes, which has happened in the past. I think members were pretty careful this time.
I'd say that's a victory. That's members paying attention, which sometimes they're accused of not doing, and taking that closer look and as you said, figuring it out and not being a rubber stamp as to what the leadership might tell them.
Right, and I think that's good for constituents. I think that's good for families and employers back home. I think if I were, if I were a small business owner back in my district and I watched this process, that would be the thing that I would identify as the thing that's most hopeful for me.
Well, you stood up during this budget debate, and it was a long debate, and there's several different bills that make up a budget bill. It's not one single bill. It's like 6, 7, 8 different bills, and they're all, like this big. You stood up at one point and talked about your private sector experience and talked about what New York State was doing in this bill for or against, depending on, again, on your perception, your point of view, to the business community by way of tax incentives, about trying to grow jobs and the private sector. Why don't we start by taking a look at some of your comments, and then we'll come back and we'll get a little more explanation on those comments from Don Miller.
This is a difficult vote for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. There are almost $1 billion in tax credits in this bill, and I'm a private sector guy, and $1 billion in tax credits from the private sector perspective is a fairly poor excuse for a business-friendly environment. We need to get serious about changing where we are as a state. We're near or at the bottom in some of the most important indicators nationally: job creation, state spending, state taxing. We're at or near the bottom for these things. We need to take a look at this and say, okay, if this is the best deal I can get today, I'll take this deal. But tomorrow's coming. We need to actually impose caps on spending in this state. We need to stop taxing capital formation in this state. We need to stop providing disincentives, which is what we do. We need to stop providing disincentives for people to begin businesses and seek profits. Profits are not a bad thing. Profits are what are required to grow jobs. We need to stop providing disincentives for those things so that we can actually provide the education that we want to provide. That we can take care of special needs kids that we want to take care of. We can take care of our moms and dads, our grandmothers and grandfathers, the elderly that we want to take care of. We can take care of, we can deal with issues of homelessness. We can deal with issues of health insurance and health care providing. If we want to do those things, we need to recognize that these things, they need to happen together. We can't continue to demonize one side of the equation or the other. Mr. Speaker, with great hesitancy, I vote in favor of this bill.
You're speaking to one of the great philosophical political debates you have here in Albany, and that's on business community and people succeeding and people doing well and then creating jobs so that other people have jobs and so forth. Yet across the aisle, the people that you were looking at on the other side of the chamber are all saying, well, why don't we just tax the millionaires and be done with it? That'll create the revenue we need in order to have all those programs for the poor and needy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things you notice from that clip is that I sort of ended sort of abruptly. My time ran out. What I was going to say next is exactly that, is that because a lot of the budget discussion on the floor had turned into a debate over the millionaire's tax. And what I was about to launch into and ran out of time on was there's a simple principle at work here in the millionaire's tax. And this is going to come up again. And that is this. If your goal as a legislative body, as a governing body, if your goal is to increase revenue to the government, which is not my goal, but if that's what the goal is, you can't achieve that by taxing wealth. There's no real revenue in taxing wealth. If you want to increase revenue to state coffers, you need to tax productivity. But in order to tax productivity, you have to have productive enterprise out there to tax. And this is where the wheels sort of fall off the wagon when it comes to the millionaire's tax. we've got to be very, very careful of what we do in terms of taxing and spending in this state, because we're reaching a point. There's a point in every continuum in the growth of every economy where government sort of falls out of its proper size. Everyone talks about, the buzzword is right-sizing government. What we have to remember is that government is not a producer. Government is a consumer. Government doesn't create jobs or wealth or prosperity or profits. It consumes those things. And so what you need is the other side, and that's what I was referring to on the floor. The other side of that equation are families and employers who create wealth. Right now, we tax the formation of wealth creation. We tax capital formation. We tax productive enterprise. If you want less of something, tax it. It's a very simple axiom. What we need to do in this state is, beyond this budget, is, as I was talking about, we need to get to actual spending caps. We need to get to tax reductions in the state. We need to get to a point where somebody with a great idea in their garage can go out into the marketplace and compete without having to worry about paying a death tax, paying a corporate franchise tax, paying a capital gains tax. Those are the types of things. Abolishing those taxes, which I've introduced legislation to do, abolishing those taxes will provide some of that footing.
And then there's the property tax, and there was a talk about putting a cap on a property tax. And of course, in just a few weeks, we're going to be hearing, some places are already hearing from their school districts and how they are responding to some of the budget cuts to education by the budget proposals that they're putting out there. They're going to be voted on in the middle of the month of May. Now, with all that said, there's some things this budget did not do, and among them was institute a property tax cap. That was a big part of the debate, but it was left on the sidelines. It is said that there's going to be some further discussion of that, and I want to show one reference to that debate and that discussion that took part this year by an introduction you made on the Assembly floor of some local officials who came to Albany to talk to you about that very subject. Let's go back to the Assembly floor and Don Miller.
House, I'd like to introduce two constituents from my home district, Mr. James Rowley and Mr. Travis Glazier. Jim is the Chief Fiscal Officer for Onondaga County, and Travis is his traveling partner. These two fine gentlemen are here in town talking with me about property tax cap legislation and mandate relief. They work for Joanne Mahoney, the county executive in Onondaga County. Joni is widely recognized as one of the most forward-thinking county executives in the state. If you would please extend the courtesies and cordialities of the House. Thank you.
Gladly, Mr. Miller. It's nice to have colleagues come up here and share their experiences with us and educate all our colleagues on important issues of the day. On behalf of Mr. Miller, on behalf of the Speaker and all my colleagues, we want to welcome you. We want to extend whatever courtesies of the floor as we can to you. We ask you to come back real soon. Thank you for being with us here today.
Kind of revelatory that the Speaker agreed property tax cap is one of the important issues of the day.
Well, this was a huge issue in the budget. Two things that went very, very well in the budget as far as I'm concerned. One is that the governor had dropped in at the last minute the possibility of a 2% property tax cap. He'd also, we got rid of that, and we got rid of the millionaire's tax out of this budget negotiation. I've introduced legislation, and I was actually talking with Mr. Rowley and Mr. Glazier about this legislation. I've introduced legislation for a 0% property tax cap that includes mandate relief in the same bill, and that's the key. If we're going to get serious about taxes, we've got to cap property taxes at 0, but we can't do that unless we address mandate relief. My bill does both of those things, and that's the direction I want to go. That's what I want to carry beyond this budget process.
And I think that's fair to say that those discussions are still to happen during this legislative session. So why don't we just pick those up in our next discussion when we meet next time, Don Miller? Sounds like a good plan. We want to thank you folks for spending your time with us, just like we thank Don Miller for joining us for our program today. We'll hope to see you all soon for our next edition of Assembly Calendar.